This is Radcliffe and McConey on Radio 2, and it's nice when a project that was discussed a long time ago on the programme actually comes to fruition. So it is with the musical of Swallows and Amazons, which Neil Hannon, it seems like years ago you first mentioned that to us.
I told you I would do it. I told you. And now I have.
Yeah.
I've written a musical and it's on the stage.
Right. It seems to have taken a while because originally I think you were in cahoots with the National, and it's Bristol Old Vic where it's wound up.
Yeah, well, it was always Tom Morris, the wonderful director of things like Warhorse.
Yeah.
And they very kindly sort of helped us to develop it, with Helen Edmondson writing the book. And it just so happened that Tom moved to be director of the Bristol Old Vic about a year ago and said, it's such a great theatre, let's put it on here.
Yeah.
So they do actually have an option to put it on in the National, but I think it'll go around the houses a bit first.
Right. The book for you, like me, is a relatively recent discovery. I think we've both been aware of it, but both bought it to read to our kids.
It's true. I mean, I'd seen the film when I was a kid, but that's about all I knew about Swallows and Arthur Ransom and everything.
Yeah.
But I saw it in the bookshop, and I had no idea that it would make a good musical. I just bought it to read to my daughter. It turned out she was far too young for it at the time, so I just read it myself.
Yeah.
And when you take away all the bump, the long descriptions of tying reef knots...
There's a lot of that, isn't there? Because I bought it to read to my youngest daughter, Rose. We'd been in the Lake District for the day, and it was a beautiful day, and we went for a sail on Windermere. And also it was when the volcanic ash cloud was there, so there were no planes. So it felt very much like it might have done it, especially since they've taken all the motorboats off Windermere.
Yeah.
We went and bought it, but I enjoyed it. It was atmospheric, but I did struggle with the bits that were like a sailing manual.
Well, when I finally did read it with Willow, I did edit large chunks of it, I must admit.
Rose can read, you said she wouldn't let me.
Oh, really?
Every word. It took us about 8 months.
Mine can read better than me, but I just sort of kept it so she couldn't see what I was reading.
I see, right. Yeah,
crafty,
smart. I wish I'd thought of that
now. But you got one up on me already by actually having been in a boat on Windermere. I always meant to do it, as part of my research, but I'm not really big on boats.
Are you not? You're not a natural sailor, then?
Not at all. No, I have vague memories of my dad's dinghy and sort of the wooden slats nipping me and the sand and the water and cold. And no, I wasn't into it at all. But I'm glad you gain hearty enjoyment from it.
We were empathetic with it before we even started. It's a classic, isn't it? I mean, it is, like the Enid Blyton things, and it's classic children having adventures without those pesky adults dampening their imagination all the time.
Yeah, I mean, hard to know exactly how much of it could actually have even happened even then. You'd have the social services on you now if you sent your kids off in a boat to camp for a week.
Yeah.
The thrust of it is childhood, imagination and sort of freedom. And it's wonderfully sort of anti-adult.
It is. Well, let's have a little listen. We've just got a little clip of you doing a sort of rendition of the theme here, I think, just a sort of squib of it. So to give us a flavour, this is Neil doing the theme from Swallows and Amazons.
We are conquering heroes. We are famous explorers. We are mighty conquistadors, lusting for gold and war. Every stream is a river. Every tree is a forest. Every rock is a mountain range, new and strange, hereby claimed by the swallows. Swallows.
When you were reading the book, Neil, were there moments that sort of you thought, that's a song? I mean, how did you go about doing it? Did you write a whole raft of songs and then try and slot them into a prearranged script, or was it more built up together organically than that?
Well, I did 2 or 3 to begin with, just of bits that I thought were obviously going to be needing a song. And then I brought them to the table with Tom and Helen, and they asked me to try other parts, and then eventually certain of those early songs fell by the wayside.
Yeah.
And there were a couple of songs where I literally did about 3 or 4 different versions of it. I mean, different songs altogether.
Right.
And I'd never experienced being told, that's not quite right, go and write another one. You know?
How did that feel? I mean, you know, I don't know.
I was philosophical.
you weren't precious about it.
Well, you can't afford to be, really. You have to
Will you
take
recycle
on board.
those?
No, actually, they were rubbish. You have to take on board the fact that, you know, these people have done it before, and
Yeah.
I was a complete musical virgin. So, yes, I went into a small room with a piano and I just did it over and over again until we all liked it, really.
Did you have a favourite musical when you were growing up? I wonder when you started writing it, if you had a vision or another musical that kind of infused your mind at the time you were creating this.
I suppose the only musicals I actually ever liked as a kid were Walt Disney films, really, because they are essentially musicals.
Yeah.
Especially The Jungle Book, which probably had a larger influence on my music than any Joy Divisions or Kraftwerks, you know. But, you know, when I became a teenager and cool, I obviously detested all musicals, and it's been a slow process ever since then of sort of finding bits that I actually enjoyed. And I like most things pre-1970.
Yeah.
You know, I love all the Cole Porter and Irving Berlin and Gershwin ones.
Yeah.
And I love a lot of Rodgers and Hammerstein,
Yeah.
but not all. Yeah. And I love Sondheim and things like that. Interesting ones after that. But, you know, it all went a bit strange, really, with Lloyd Webber and Les Miserables and all that. I went to see Les Mis as part of my research.
Right.
And, I actually left halfway through. I couldn't stand it. It was awful.
Yeah. I felt that way about Evita.
Yeah,
You know,
I can imagine. I've never seen it.
I went to the film with Madonna, and bizarrely, Jimmy Nail, or have I made that up? Was it Madonna and Jimmy Nail in Evita?
You get the most extraordinary people turning up.
And it was only when it started it occurred to me, oh no, they're going to sing all the way through it. I just thought there'd be a couple of songs in there, you know, but the longest night of my entire life. Another thing that was interesting, I saw some clips of, you know, from the thing that was on about the kind of workshops and the production before it launched and everything. And the first thing that struck me is the cast are adults.
Yeah, everybody goes, what, to begin with. But I knew from an early stage, once we'd sort of workshopped it a bit, that this was by far the best way to approach it. You know, because kids are all very well, but especially if they're on stage at that age, they're obviously terribly precocious and quite annoying. But in many ways, the adults bring a lot more sort of pathos to it and a lot more sort of knowledge of what comes afterwards. It helps kind of flesh out the characters. And they're just brilliant. All the cast are absolutely amazing, and I'm in complete awe of them. And all the instruments are played by actors on stage.
Yeah, I saw that.
It's quite extraordinary. And I went to see it for the press night, and I was totally blown away, bizarrely, because I know it's meant to be my thing, but I'd never seen it all the way through. And I'd never seen it on a stage, obviously, with all the staging and everything. Yeah. And I completely forgot that I wrote it, really.
Right, well, that's good. And the kind of the staging of it, you know, it's not like you get the full boats on. They kind of hold bits of wood and masts and things to kind of suggest the boat and suggest the movement of the boat.
Yeah.
And the lake
like
is kind of ribbons that are wiggling about and things.
That's right. Like the adults playing the kids, you know, it's sort of... The description of it turns people off to begin with. But I guarantee once you see it, you become wholeheartedly involved in the sort of just playing aspect of it.
The book is, of course, from a different age, and it is terribly middle class. You know, I mean, did you have to consciously broaden that, or did that just happen anyway because you're doing it now with actors who are kind of contemporary?
I think Helen and I were very conscious of just how... hideously, almost colonial it is.
Yeah,
in
but it's
style.
from that time, isn't it?
Yeah, but if you sort of strip away the slightly bizarre language and archaic ideas, the story itself doesn't really need any of that.
No.
So we changed a few... I mean, instead of them saying savages about the sort of the people on the shore.
Yeah.
We call them barbarians because it's slightly less offensive. You know?
Right. Yeah. Well, language shifts
little
over
things
time,
like that.
doesn't it? Yeah, of course.
But I mean, we had a discussion very early on about whether one of the Walker children could really be called Titty in this day and age.
Yeah.
And we thought, yeah, of course. I mean, it's just a name, and to be honest, hardly anybody's even mentioned it. It is a bit strange to the modern ear, but it's just a name.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And has this whetted your appetite? Are you going to write loads of film scores and more musicals and things now, or is it back to Divine Comedy Records next?
As has been my want over the last 10 years, I'm just going to try and do a bit of everything, because, keeps you interested.
Yeah. And you've been working as a one-man band. Has that been kind of tiring but liberating?
Yes.
Good.
Sorry, I just thought you hit the nail on the head, really.
Okay, well, that's
tiring but liberating. I feel tired and liberated.
That's a good place to be. I was asking you before we did this if you had a favourite Christmas record, and you have an affection for Frankie Goes to Hollywood, The Power of Love.
Yeah, although it's not terribly Christmassy.
It was number one at Christmas, wasn't it?
It was at the time, and I remember us all watching it on Top of the Pops for its debut video screening, and my dad was sitting there, and they'd been through so much trouble that year, and everybody was kind of holding their breath to see how offensive it would be. Yeah. And actually, it was gorgeous, and I remember that with affection.